Hey guys, I'm here to talk about Life is Strange because I just finished Life is Strange True Colors and I wanted to sort of express my feelings about it. So let's begin with Life is Strange 1. Now, Life is Strange 1 came out a while ago, like 2018 or something. Maybe I can say that. Yeah. 2015, right, I was still in high school. So Life is Strange 1 came out in 2015. It's a game about Max, who moves to live in a university in a small town in, I think, Ohio. uh, and a bunch of stuff happens to her. She starts to develop these powers where she can rewind time, and this comes at a very sort of sensitive time in her life, where, of course, she is meeting these new people, but she's also of an age where she's sort of finally gaining independence, having moved out of home and trying to establish herself. And I think from a thematic perspective, Life is Strange 2 is a really remarkable achievement in video game storytelling. Uh, it came out at a time where there had been a recent surge in a genre known as choices matter. Uh, Whereas choices in video games, like what skills you pick and which attacks you use, had always had an impact on the moment-to-moment plot of video games, and there has had been RPGs where your choices had mattered for a long time. Uh, this sort of genre focused way more on animation and cinematics than a lot of those games, and really nailed down on the core of their gameplay, the part that is fun, or engaging rather. I hate using the word fun, and I do it anyway. But the part that was engaging is making choices and seeing how those choices manifest later. These are games like The Walking Dead, The Wolf Among Us, any of those Telltale games. They had Game of Thrones and Batman ones as well as the David Cage games, Heavy Rain, Beyond Two Souls, Fahrenheit. I've listened to interviews with the directors of Life is Strange 1 and 2, and they have cited that those games were hugely influential to them. Where Life is Strange differs is because Max gains the ability to rewind time, you can actually change your decisions. You get to not only change your decisions, but you get basically infinite amount of time to make those decisions. Whereas games like The Walking Dead would put a lot of pressure on you to make just snap decisions in the heat of the moment to really try to get you to connect with the characters and with the story and make you feel like you were in that moment in those high pressure situations. Life is Strange strips all of that away. Uh, and you would think that that would be to its detriment. I mean, the Walking Dead games and those other Telltale games, they do that very intentionally to really try to immerse you into the character. But Life is Strange, by taking that away, and not only taking that away, but giving you the opportunity to immediately see how Max manifests your choices, Max being the protagonist of the game, how she manifests your choices, and then having the opportunity to go back and change those. Um, it actually kind of turned the theory behind the Telltale games design on its head, because at least I found that I had way more investment in every single choice that I made in this game. Every choice I gave way more consideration and felt personally more attached to my choices than in any of those other games. Uh, and that is not only remarkable as sort of a from a game design perspective, but it also strongly mirrors and reinforces the themes of this game, because this game, again, Max is at a very sensitive time in her life. She's a young woman. She's moved out of home for the first time. She's living by herself, independent, and she's all of a sudden gained these powers and is meeting these new people, and she has to sort of establish herself and find her identity, while at the same time wrestling with the fact that she's now a superhero and making all these relationships in this small town. Uh, and suddenly, as an adult, as like a young adult, having her choices matter. Like the genre says, having her choices have an impact on the people around her, and having to take responsibility for that. The mechanics of being able to rewind your choices and really pour over and consider what outcomes you want uh, mirrors that human experience of growing up and going through the process of becoming an adult and taking accountability for your actions perfectly. And not only that, but the other thing that this game does remarkably is establish an atmosphere of living in the town of Arcadia Bay, which once again I believe is supposed to be based somewhere in Ohio, um, or Oregon. Oregon, definitely Oregon. Uh, does that beautifully. The art direction, the music. This game has one of the best, probably actually my favorite licensed soundtrack in any video game. It is incredible. Hats off to everybody who worked on this game because, in terms of a cohesive a narrative and aesthetic experience, this one is one to write home about. I know that some people, especially older people at the time, felt like it was trying too hard and and caused a bit of a cringe response in them, um, because it was trying too hard to sort of relate to and represent youth culture, which I can certainly understand. I mean, the people making these games aren't young, but as a young person who was playing this game when it came out, I found no issue with that. It felt very representative of people of my age. Uh, and I have nothing but, well, I almost have nothing but praise for it. To a certain extent, I initially felt like the representation of Max's relationship with Chloe, of course, it has the potential to be a gay relationship. Through your choices, you can sort of manifest whether Chloe is sort of a friend to Max or is a romantic person of romantic interest to Max. Um, I felt that the way that they represented that romantic relationship initially, when I played it the first time, was very much catering to the male gaze. There's a scene where they get in their underwear and swim in a pool. It felt very unnecessary. To this day, I still think it's unnecessary. But the more that I think about it, the more that I listen to the writers and directors of this game talk about their experience making it, I think it was done with good intentions. However, I would still definitely change it and be hesitant about it if you decide to play it. Beyond that, it also has representations of depression and suicide that felt less token than any other video game I've played. They felt completely natural and they were explored with grace. It felt like it came from a position of they had created these characters and these were natural human experiences that these characters were going through. It didn't feel like they just shoehorned it in there to get brownie points for having positive representation of these mental health issues. It felt very authentic, very sincere. Huge congrats to the people who made this game. It's one of my favorite games of all time, really. It's probably in like the top 15, but still, it's up there. Then, like 2 years later, how much later? 3 years later, 2018, Life is Strange Before the Storm comes out. Now, Life is Strange Before the Storm is a prequel series. You play as Chloe this time before Max has moved to Arcadia Bay. And it takes away the ability to control time. So all of that really interesting progress that Life is Strange made in terms of that design space and using those designs to reinforce its themes, this game just strips that away, which in its defense is fine. You can't justify having these characters in a prequel having the ability to control time and having that not come up in this game. Like, that'd be ridiculous. Uh, and for what it's worth, this game comes across way more to me as a sort of love letter to the initial game. It's actually developed by a different studio. I think it shares a lot of the writing team, but it's not directed by the same people. It's kind of its own separate thing. And as a prequel, as a piece of sort of fan service to people who loved the first game, I think that's fine that they took all of that away. However, what I didn't like about Life is Strange Before the Storm was its ending. And I'm not seeking to spoil it here, but the final decision in this game, it's a binary choice. You get one of two options. And as many of these games do, it seeks to represent these options as compelling, as if there is a lot of tension between, a lot of pros and cons to both sides and a lot of merit to either option. However, I think that it's one of the decisions is so reprehensible that it was the easiest and most obvious decision I've ever had to make in a game. And it left me with a feeling of disgust that the game was trying to even suggest that the other option was conceivable. Um, that is really my one and only criticism. And I don't have a problem with games. Like, these games are full of choices where there are options where I don't like, and I don't think that the character should make them. But I could perfectly reasonably understand why a character should make them. But the way this game seeks to justify one of the final choices, to me, equating that to the rest of the choices in the game, uh, is deplorable, really, like, sincerely, to the point where it really undermined a lot of the joy that I had in this game. Because other than that, I think it represents the same sort of atmosphere, the same sort of coming of age vibes really, really well. But that final decision was so unconscionable to me that it actually sincerely undermined my enjoyment of the game. And then I thought, based on this trend, that Don't Nod, the developers of the original Life is Strange, I thought that they were done with the series. Little did I know, there came a game called Life is Strange 2. Now, Life is Strange 2 focuses on Sean and... what's his name? Sean... Life is Strange 2, Sean and Daniel. Daniel, of course. So Sean and Daniel Diaz, who are brothers, and Daniel has telekinetic powers, psychic powers that are sort of outside of his control. Like, he has more power than he realizes, and he doesn't quite know how to utilize it. And they get put into a position where they're on the run from the police. Sean and Daniel are Hispanic, and this is an important factor in their relationship with the police. They don't have a trusting relationship with the police, and I think Life is Strange 2 is once again a sort of remarkable achievement, not to the same extent that Life is Strange 1 is, but in the context of the series and as a comparison point to Life is Strange 1, incredible. I think it's a fantastic sequel, and I think it does more than many others, whilst being about entirely different characters. Because where Life is Strange 1 was a coming of age story about sort of a person in a privileged position, this white middle upper class teenage girl who... I'm not that teenage girls have more privilege than other groups, but she got to go to her dream high school, like an arts high school, and she just experiences a lot of privilege. Life is Strange 2 is about someone who isn't given the choice to grow up as much, isn't given as much room and as much choice to grow up, but is rather forced in a position where they have to grow up, and not just grow up, but sort of become a leader. And in that respect, the fact that not only in Life is Strange 2 do you no longer have the ability to rewind decisions, and you don't have as much control over the outcomes, but your younger brother has this reckless power that is constantly getting you into strife and forcing you to make these quick decisions, and putting you in these high pressure situations that you didn't really have in Life is Strange 1. Once again, what an achievement in terms of making the mechanics mirror the themes of the game. Sean and Daniel, yeah, they have to grow up, and Daniel has to... it's less of a coming of age story and more of a story about education and what it means to be a mentor and an educator, a teacher, a parent, in a situation where you didn't really have a choice in the matter. And I think it represents those themes really well, and there's so much that you can read into it and take away from what it's trying to say about those sorts of things. So hats off to Life is Strange 2. I think overall, Life is Strange 1 is better. I think just narratively, the character arcs flow way better, whereas in Life is Strange 2, it's kind of all over the place. I tended to enjoy the later episodes more, but I know a lot of people preferred the earlier episodes. And I can completely understand that because they're very different. And I would say that everybody can agree on the fact that they are different and it's not for the game's benefit. The flow of the game, it could have either been slower like the first few episodes or more fast paced like the later episodes. But the inconsistency, it's not. It doesn't feel like it's intentional. It feels like a mistake, and it sort of interrupts the enjoyment of the narrative and the immersion in it, for that matter. So that would be my one main criticism for Life is Strange 2. But other than that, a remarkable game, and I'm so glad it exists. I'm so glad that Don't Nod decided to come back to the series and use this, not make a sequel to the narrative, but make a sequel to the themes, and really try to see, like, okay, what is this experience like for people in a different circumstance? Like, I wish there were more games like Life is Strange 2. It's fantastic. Now, the game I recently played is Life is Strange True Colors. This is Deck 9, the Life is Strange Before the Storm team. This is their second attempt at making a Life is Strange game. And this one is not a prequel. It's not related to any of the other characters. There is one reappearing character named Steph, but in the previous game, she had a very minor role. So it's not important that you know anything about the other games. Life is Strange True Colors is about a woman named Alex Chen, who has been an orphan from a very young age, and finally gets the opportunity to move in with her brother now that he's out of prison and he's sort of established. He went to juvie. He's sort of established a life of his own in a small town in Colorado in the mountains. He finds Alex. He chases her up through phone books and stuff, and says, "Hey, why don't we get you out of sort of the orphanage system, and you can come live with me." Now, Alex is an adult at the time. I want to make that clear, but she moves in with him, and this game thematically is, as opposed to sort of Life is Strange Before the Storm being a retread of what it means to grow up and be in a vulnerable position, what it means to be a child growing up and be vulnerable and be at the whim of adults, which is sort of just like looking at this coming of age story from a different perspective. Uh, Life is Strange Before the Storm, no, True Colors is instead its own thing completely. Thematically, I don't think it is trying to use the other Life is Strange games to say anything. It is about belonging and finding a place in the earth. I mean, as a human, finding community, what that means, and how that affects people. But this is my problem with Life is Strange True Colors. Alex Chen, our main character, is easily, by far and away, the most unique video game protagonist ever. The most unique protagonist in a video game I've ever played. Completely different from anything else. And to that extent, remarkable. I'm so glad that they chose to represent a character like this. It's kind of hard to express why she is the way that she responds to having agency, without going into specifics, because I feel like I'm going to do a bad job of articulating it. But what I mean is the way that she responds to having agency is just different from anything else I've ever seen. And I want to give that its kudos. But the problem is that despite having this super unique character, I think the narrative of the game treats her like she's the same as these other games treated their protagonists, who are more traditional protagonists in video games or any other media. But Alex Chen isn't like that, and it makes this weird. It causes this very strange dissonance where a lot of her choices don't seem congruent with each other, and her relationships with the other cast members, they don't come across like the way the game is sort of treating them like they're coming across. She has these two main friends in the town who you can have romantic relationships with either of them. I have never felt more dirty having a romantic relationship in a video game with someone, because despite the game trying to tell me otherwise, I couldn't believe that this character had feelings for my protagonist, Alex Chen. It just didn't make any sense. It felt like the game was manipulating her to Steph is the character that I romanced, I felt like the game was manipulating her to be with me. And Ryan didn't feel much better. In fact, I think the two characters in the whole story who had the most chemistry with each other were Steph and Ryan. I'm not saying it was romantic chemistry, but even from a friendship perspective, like Alex's relationships with these characters is very weird. And I think if the game wanted to sort of convince me that she had a romantic chemistry with these other characters, it would have had to take so much more time than it had. But Life is Strange True Colors doesn't have that much time. It is the episodes are way shorter compared to the because these games are episodic. I've left that out up until now. It doesn't matter. These games are episodic, so you play through episode 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Life is Strange True Colors, each episode is so much shorter than the other games because they try to expand the scope of the gameplay to be less linear. But this, and while this does really help them capture the atmosphere of living in a small town to an extent that I don't know if any other game has done it as well as Life is Strange True Colors does. There just isn't enough time for these characters to form relationships that are convincing to me as the audience, as the player. And to a further extent, because they don't have this amount of time, Alex Chen becomes a really, even though I think she's a remarkable character, super interesting, outside of this context, she is not fit to express the sort of themes that this game wants to express in the runtime that it has. People may vehemently disagree with me. I think it does a remarkable job of articulating the experience of being an orphan and feeling left out, feeling ostracized, feeling like you don't belong. But I think it doesn't nail what it means to find belonging and how that affects someone. I don't think it does well at that at all. I don't think it makes any interesting statements. I don't know what to take away from it from that perspective at all. Whereas these other Life is Strange games, I think there was always something to take away from it. But despite that incongruity, I actually really liked Life is Strange True Colors, and I'm glad that it exists. The non-linear nature again was there to, I think, sort of capture this small town feeling. And I think there's a lot to be said there thematically about the importance of community in someone's mental health. I haven't even brought up the fact that in this game our protagonist has the ability to read other people's emotions. But I don't really think that it's too necessary. Obviously, it's there for a reason, and I could go into the reasons why it's there. Don't make me do it though. But I don't truly. I don't think that that's the most important thing. I don't think the game uses it to say anything really effective, except sort of. I will 100% give it credit once again. It is a good way of exploring how trauma and how like being put in a position to, as a child, manage everybody's emotions in your family and the people around you managing their emotions, how that can affect you later on and the way that you see other people and emotions and interactions with other people. I think it does a good job of that, and there's certainly a lot to take away from there. But that all those themes feel separate from the community and the belonging stuff, and I don't think it comes together as cohesively as I really wanted to. Like, I'm sorry to say, because so much about Life is Strange True Colors I think is really great, and I love Alex Chen in a vacuum. I don't have any particularly strong takeaway to end this on, but I'm very confused about where the series is going from here, because I feel like there's certainly room to. I feel like Alex's story isn't over, but the way that the game ends gives you a bit of a flash. At least for my end, it gave me a flash forward into the future, which makes it seem impossible that they'd ever do something with it. But I'm left with this feeling of wanting more, wanting to actually like finish the story. Let's see how these events really changed Alex, because I feel like we don't get that. And I really wish that, because since they have such an interesting and unique protagonist on their hands, that the game had written itself differently to sort of match that character and that protagonist. But it just wasn't there. And I don't know if I could have done a better job, honestly. Like, when you have a character that unique, it's hard to make the game rise to their level. Yeah. Anyway, those are my thoughts on Life is Strange. If you've never played it, I recommend checking it out if it seems interesting to you, because there's certainly a lot to think about.